Welcome back to Crime Besties. We're here for part 2 of the staircase today. We are very excited to get back into this case. Welcome, Emma.
Thank you, Meg. I'm really excited to get into the nitty-gritty of this now. I know last week's episode was very heavy, but we still haven't we only got to Kathleen's death, Kathleen being dead at the bottom of the stairs. So there's a lot to come in this episode. So thank you for coming back and listening to part 2. Obviously, if you haven't listened to part 1, go back and have a listen now, because this will sort of follow on from there.
Yeah, we've got to get through this though today because Emma's got to get to Costco.
Yes, I do. Costco. Well, I was just telling you before, it's been a while since I've been, and I've run out of all of my Costco staples.
What are you avoiding it?
No, I'm not avoiding it. I just haven't had time. You need a bit of time to go because you can never get in and out of there in under an hour, even if you've only got to get one thing, and you never get one thing.
Because you never get one thing.
And I don't know, it's just a little bit out of my way, and I just haven't the time. But come, once we're finished here, that's where I'll be headed.
It is.
What are your Costco staples?
My Costco staple. I get big boxes of like snack stuff for my kids because we've got to drive from school to home. We've got about a 20 to 30 minute drive depending on traffic. So I stock up on a heap of snacks for the kids in the car. And what else do I buy? Most of my meat I get from Costco.
Just quickly on the snacks, it's not only your children that you buy snacks for. My kids hang out at your boot to try and get something for the 3-second drive home for us.
I always stock heavy for you guys.
You know what they like.
I do, yeah. No, I am the shocking parent all the time. As we always are, we never get it right, do we? I like a Sunday afternoon ritual of restocking the box in the car.
Okay.
But as the week progresses, depending on who's been at the car, and also just the level of food that my kids need throughout the week, it doesn't always make it to the end of the week. And so by Thursday and Friday, they're like, but there's none of the stuff I want. So, yeah. But that's life, guys. Get over it. There's always stuff in there. It's just whether or not it's what they want.
God, could you be a worse mum?
Other people's mums don't put snacks in the car.
Peter's mum they lived about I think it was like maybe a 20-minute drive from school, and she used to stop and let them get a Slurpee and a hot dog on the way home, or she'd pack like a really nice, like decent sized snack in the car for them.
Do you not tell my children this?
Oh, I won't. Don't worry. And my children certainly will never know that.
Biggest treat ever if we stop at a Slurpee, 7-Eleven sort of situation on the way home. Like, it's usually when we've got Lucas with us, because we always go to Slurpees if Lucas is with us.
That's right. It's like, Meg always takes me. I'm like, well, that's right. So I don't have to. So meat at Costco as well.
Yeah. Oh, and I do the smelly stuff for the little beady things in the laundry.
Have you used those before? Are they worth it?
They really are.
Okay.
They're expensive, but much cheaper to buy there, of course. But no, I do. I rate those. Yeah. I don't know what else are my staples.
I find with Costco, you've just got to know your prices, and the things that are good value are really good value, and the things that aren't just really aren't.
One of my staples is one that because there's a few of us in the friendship group that buy this, that whoever's doing a Costco run goes and gets, and that's the Skippy peanut butter.
Oh, they are huge. They last forever, and they're great. And we all have kids who love peanut butter, so it works out well.
And Emma's been caught buying 6 containers of it once for all of us. We're all out at the same time.
Yep.
And you loaded up your trolley.
Yep. So it was a hefty push, that one.
People glaring, going, what is she doing with all that peanut butter? You freaking weirdo.
Or do we want to know what she's doing with that peanut butter? Maybe not. Yeah, I'm the same. I buy laundry detergent, nappy sand, because my kids are disgusting and I need to soak their clothes all the time.
That's right. Yeah.
I thought beyond toddlerhood you didn't need nappy sand, but it turns out incorrect.
I find more so. Like with the stains from all the sport, like the footy and that sort of thing.
Yeah, and one of mine eats with his mouth open. I think I don't really know how he manages it, but he's so messy. So anyway, I've got to go into a Costco run because we have no laundry detergent left. That's the impetus behind me needing to go today.
It just means you don't have to do laundry.
Yeah, but then it just piles up. True. And Oliver's getting home from camp today, so I can imagine there is going to be a lot of washing to do.
And a whole lot more noise entering your house then too.
Yeah.
It's been quiet, has it? Or somewhat?
It has been so quiet.
I mean, you're still here.
Hey. I didn't think of it from that perspective.
You felt the extra what you intake.
Yeah, she was
Lucas is
massive.
probably going, it's hard, thank God.
And this morning, Lucas came into bed with us, and he just lay there for like a good half an hour,
The angel child.
not needing to do anything. If that was Oliver, he would have. Oh God, I can't even imagine. But anyway, I cannot wait for him to get back. I have missed him so much. It's only been 2 nights, but you know.
But your food bill will jump a lot when you get back. Oh, God.
Anyway, should we keep going with the case?
We should. So where have we left off? We left off last week where we had Kathleen at the bottom of the stairs and the horrendous amount of blood that was left there.
So much blood.
We should clarify that too. These were head injuries, and with a head injury comes a lot of blood. You generally know that if there's more blood from a head injury than anywhere else pretty much on the body.
My son, so Lucas, actually, we were at Oliver's gymnastics. This was back ages and ages ago, years ago. And Lucas fell off a little box and bumped the back of his head, and we ended up having to take him to ED because it was bleeding. It was really it was a pretty heavy knock. And by the time we got to emergency, I was wearing a white T-shirt and it was saturated. Like it was covered in blood. And he only needed, I think it was 3 little stitches. And the wound on the back of his head, you'll be able to see the scar when you see him this afternoon. Yeah. But it's tiny. And so from that tiny little wound, my shirt was saturated. So the head's bleed. So keeping that in mind, I guess. Yes. There was a lot of blood, but there's some really interesting evidence that's come from the way the blood was spattered, where blood was found, and sort of the positioning of her body and how that all related.
Yes. Yeah. And for that information, you really do need to see the images, like for us to explain exactly where she is. But because the way her body was laying at the bottom of the stairs, it's questionable where she started from. Yep. I guess, like, was she climbing up the stairs and fallen backwards? Was she going towards the stairs and didn't get anywhere up the stairs? Because there's blood spatter kind of in this corner piece. Like the stairs were very narrow. They were like what in this mansion, which we're not allowed to call it, according to Mike. But it was because there was a big glorious set of stairs at the front of the house, which was where everyone would use. But these were as if you had servants. Yeah, they would have used these
sort of
back
went
stairs.
Into the kitchen area.
Yeah,
and up into the bedrooms, but
which obviously they used regularly as their stairs, like kind of getting up and down. They didn't go to the formal stairs as they lived in it, but so they were quite a narrow set of stairs,
and it had a very sort of sharp turn. So that you walk into this where the staircase is, and it turned a right-hand turn straight away. So if you can imagine, as the stairs make a right-hand turn, there's very little tread on the stairs on the inner corner of that going around. So if she's walked up on a very, very narrow part of the step, the inference is that she's slipped on that. Yeah. I think that's what the prosecution's theory the prosecution's theory the defense's theory is that she's actually slipped on that step, fallen and hit her head, and that's sort of,
and that because she did have blood on the bottom of her feet, they can infer from that she has then attempted to get herself back up again and has fallen again and hit her head, and that's when she's knocked herself out.
Yeah, there were 7 lacerations on her head though. Yeah. So, and the coroner concluded that it was from 7 separate incidents. Yes. Although there's another theory that the way that this is described, I think it's a good visual because it makes you understand exactly what they're talking about, but to think of her head in this context is terrifying. But basically what they've said is that it could also be that these lacerations happened like if you were swinging a watermelon and it basically tore open.
Yes.
Or like if you drop a watermelon and the impact of that drop, it hasn't shattered everywhere, it's
split. Because there was also, I think, what she described in the autopsy report was like 3 impact points. Yeah. And then it splits from there is where the skin has split, because we also must mention there was no skull fractures found and no swelling of the brain. No. So with an impact, you would assume that the level of impact to make those sorts of splits would leave brain injury of some, well, not necessarily brain injury, but like swelling
or
a
skull fracture. That's exactly right. The only way, well, I'm sure there are other ways, but the way that the defense have explained, the prosecution, I'm getting myself all muddled up, but the way the prosecution have explained that is that the only way that that could happen is if it were a blunt force trauma, like an inflicted injury. That would account for the fact that there's no brain swelling and no fracture, because if it, depending on what was used to inflict those wounds, that could absolutely explain things away.
So the prosecution put forward a blowpoke. Now, a blowpoke is literally as it is named. It's for a fireplace, and you blow in it, and you can poke the fire with it, and to get your fire going. And it makes, so therefore it's hollow. And they put forward that this would be the perfect weapon for these injuries to have occurred, for it to have been hit, but it would have had to have been hit at a certain, like, not too hard, but not too soft, to then not have a skull fracture or any swelling to the brain.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And the reason they chose a blowpoke is because Kathleen's sister had gifted all of the, now this is weird, had gifted all of the family a blowpoke many years before for Christmas or something.
Yeah.
And so they all had matching blowpokes.
But matching blowpoke. Sorry, like
if my brother gave me a freaking blowpoke for a present, Matthew, don't you even think about it.
Oh, I'm hoping there's one coming this Christmas.
Fuck no, take it back. Get me something better. Yeah, she's so the prosecution have inferred that this blowpoke, which was supposedly missing from the house, was the weapon used. But okay, they had no explanation as to where the blowpoke was.
No.
Or where it was disposed of, or how he would have had time to dispose of it, although that's sort of their theory would have allowed for some time, I guess, for him to dispose of it. But what happened with it in the end?
Blowpoke.
Yeah.
I never hear that word again. So the blowpoke was brought into, they actually brought a replica, because Kathleen's sister was able to present one that she basically had given to a gift to someone else, and brought that in as a replica to show in court, and they had this and flashed it around. Now, they also used this blowpoke to do some testing of the theory, which we can get to again later. So the blowpoke, the prosecution, the entire trial were, we don't know where this blowpoke is, but this is like the one that could have been used. They never said it was definitively the weapon that was used. They did carefully say that this is a likely weapon. It's something like this could have inflicted the wounds. So they presented the whole trial until the second last day of the trial, just before they were going into final. Oh my God, my words are not coming out.
There was the closing arguments.
Closing arguments. Thank you. We're getting to the closing arguments, and miraculously, Clayton, one of them, Clayton found the blowpoke
in the garage. Now, right. The police had apparently extensively searched the house on multiple occasions over this span of however many. It was more than 12 months. It
was 2 years between.
I think they'd searched the house 5 times, and they didn't find the blowpokes. So,
or didn't they?
Did they?
Did they? There was photos. So there were photos taken of their first search through the house of one of the lead detectives on the case holding up the blowpoke. But those photos were never disclosed to the defence. And the story from the prosecution is that the attorneys themselves, even though everyone comes under the same rule of this, that anyone, basically the police, the attorneys, everyone involved in that case, they are under the same rule that everything needs to be disclosed to the defence. They did not disclose those photos. Those photos just happened to be things that were decided that weren't needed to be disclosed. And the attorneys sort of went, we didn't even know they existed ourselves. Do I believe that? I don't think so. Because it was, they clearly found that blowpoke a long time ago in this case, and then went down this track of presenting it that way because it worked for them. And then, lo and behold, Clayton found it sitting in the garage. So it was tested to see if there was blood on it or anything. There was no chemicals found on it to have been cleaned. It was fairly well ruled out at that point as to being that particular blow poke being the weapon.
Not being the weapon.
Not being the weapon, sorry. That it was not the weapon used to injure Kathleen.
Yes.
But yeah, I don't know, that was an interesting... to find that out at the very end of the trial, it kind of like, to me, as a prosecution, wouldn't you kind of like lean on the side of going, we've got to scrap this and start again?
For sure.
And I think that would be enough of a twist in it, all to have that been discovered so late, even if they went down that track of, we didn't know this existed, and go, right, we need to...
But everything that the prosecution did was hinging on the theory that this blow poke was the weapon that he used. Yeah. All of the crime scene reenactments that they did to try and basically replicate what had happened, and I use the word replicate, not test. It was all with the blow poke leading, and trying to replicate the same blood spatter and injuries.
You can actually get those videos online if you search them. You can find them, that what they did to test.
And have you seen those, like the trolley, and it's got like hundreds of heads in it that they've been used to fake heads, ballistics heads made out of ballistic gel or whatever they use to try and replicate the scene. Like, they did that hundreds and hundreds of times to try and get an exact replica of the crime scene. And
once they did, like once.
And even then it wasn't, they had to actually move themselves in quite an unnatural way to replicate it, or to get the same result.
That was on his shorts, and when he put his leg up, he adjusted the shorts.
The crime scene tester,
pulled his shorts in a particular way to sort of place it so that it could be splattered. Whereas if he'd naturally just stepped up on the step, as Michael would have in that scenario, like, in that moment, it wouldn't have splattered the way it did in that.
That's it. So they found a drop of blood on the inseam of Michael's shorts, and the blood splatter was splatting upwards towards the crotch.
Michael.
The visual. So the prosecution state that was their conclusive evidence that he must have been the perpetrator of this, because how else would a droplet going in that direction have been found on the inseam of his shorts? But we now know since this, basically because of that particular piece of evidence, Michael was found guilty at his first trial of Kathleen's murder.
Yeah.
The FBI agent or blood spatter expert, Special Agent Dwayne Deaver, was the one to do all of these recreations. And what ended up happening with him, Meg, he was an incredibly problematic, I'm not even going to use the word scientist, but...
Yeah, I mean, he was found with another case to have basically invented
evidence
which convicted another person who was never at the scene. And that was a case where there was a tiny bit of what looked like blood on a truck, put the guy at a scene of a death, and it turned out it wasn't even blood, and that all these tests had been done that had proven that he had hidden. And so they only used this one very used test by most to prove that it was blood. And it wasn't blood. So this guy was convicted. I think he was in jail for like 8 years. Oh, no, he was in jail for like 15 years, I think. And then finally got out because this Dwayne Deaver's methods were proven to be very
they're not scientific by any stretch of the imagination. And as I said before, he was trying to reproduce crime scenes that matched the prosecution's theory instead of just trying to, figure out what actually happened and design an experiment that might show what actually happened. Whether that matched with the theory or not, that's not him. That's not his job.
No. And the prosecution really in the trial for Michael really focused on the fact that this evidence he works for us, for the government, for you, the jury, he's on our side. So he has to be telling the truth.
Yeah, well, the assistant, was she the assistant district attorney?
Oh, I'm not sure what her exact title was. Frida
Was
Black.
it? She actually said in her closing argument something along the lines of, if you believe that, you know, this blood spatter isn't real, then you believe that Dwayne is a liar.
That's right.
A liar.
Yeah.
And
a liar.
And the jury, who were, you know, subsequently interviewed, because you can do that in America.
Yeah, I find that really fascinating. Yeah.
They say that was the thing that got them across the line. They couldn't dispute that. I think when they first went to deliberate, there were 4 jurors who were unsure, but when they re-looked at the blood spatter evidence, that's what got those 4 jurors to get across the line.
Yeah. And I mean, and at the end of the day, yeah, he was a liar.
He was a liar.
It turns out.
So Michael was allowed to have a retrial, or they had to motion for him to have a retrial. That took a long time.
That took ages. I mean, even just that, the motion itself was like days and days and days of
5 days
evidence and stuff.
Yeah,
that
but
was
even
insane.
to get to a point where they had a court hearing, I think it was like years.
Yeah, I mean, if anything else in this, that's an injustice to me, of that how long that took. I mean, that was crazy.
Yeah, and ultimately he was granted a retrial.
Yes.
Yeah. And he was, at that point, he was actually released on bail under house arrest.
Yes.
So he was allowed out of prison, and I mean, by this stage, Michael was an absolute shell of his former self, wasn't he? He was very frail.
He aged, and he was, I kind of, I don't know about that, because I do see both sides in this. He's 8 years older. He's been in jail for 8 years too. Like, I mean, that's got to wear.
That's what I'm saying. Like, I think he's aged more than 8 years, but that's it was a hard 8 years.
Yeah.
You know, he was so stooped, and he'd lost weight as well, or he certainly looked very sallow, very sunken.
Yeah.
In his face. And he was, you know, he sort of had that old man shuffle, like he wasn't really walking.
No.
And the clothes that they'd given him for that retrial motion, they were all oversized and way too. It made him, I wonder whether they did that on purpose. Do you reckon?
I think so.
Yeah, because they made him look little and delicate.
His defense attorney weren't stupid. I reckon he did all those.
What are your thoughts on him? We haven't actually spoken much about him.
Again, another one. I backflip. I mean, I think he did a very good job.
Agreed.
So whether or not I like him, I don't think you have to like your attorney. You know what I mean? They've got to do the job that you needed them to do.
Yeah.
Because honest to God, at the end of this trial, I am floored that he was convicted.
Same.
Whether I believe or not whether he did it, to me there was more than enough doubt.
Agreed.
Like in the defence's case, in the prosecution's case, there was well and truly. I think the defense did a very good job of making sure that there was doubt. They did not they did not sort of push that they knew what happened. They didn't. They just.
Well, they didn't present a theory.
No, but because no one knew, no one saw what happened, and that's what they kept really going back to, that the theory that the prosecution are putting forward, there's doubt on that. We don't know what happened.
Yeah.
But it's not, but it's quite possibly not that. And I think they did a very good job of that. And I do think, unfortunately, once again, which is where I question juries being general public, they were more swayed by the fact of this is a man who was living a life that they didn't maybe approve of him being bisexual, and things like that made them sway a certain way. And then I think plus the blood evidence and being told things like that by the prosecution that he must be lying if that's not fact. That's what meant that he was convicted.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think that David Rudolph did an incredible job for Michael.
I think so too. I think I said at the start of last episode, had I been on the jury, I don't think I could have voted to convict, because there was definitely reasonable doubt there. And they proved that over and over again with their arguments against everything that the prosecution presented. I couldn't agree with you more. And I think, you know, to have somebody like David Rudolph on your side, please.
He'd be my first phone call if I was like being, you know, accused of murder, for sure. He was bloody good at his job.
He was very, very good.
Yeah. And I mean, to have in the area that he lived and having this female prosecutor standing there endlessly repeating anal sex again and again to the jury, I think that was more what played in their mind of like, this is a man that, you know, he's immoral. And that's just because you like anal sex doesn't mean that you're a murderer.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's it. They had their story. They ran with it. The jury bought it, and he ended up, you know, going to prison.
Yeah.
So when he came out so they appealed, I think it was in September 2006, they appealed on the basis of the SBI agent testimony being rubbish. And it wasn't affirmed until November 2007. So it was over a year. And then his new trial didn't actually have a start date until March in 2009. So it was 2.5 years that he was supposed to wait. And he decided, well, the timing, actually, I find the timing of this really doesn't match up. I'm not quite sure what happened in between the retrial and then his Alford plea entry.
So it was quite complicated. Yeah. There's some real complications in there because there were some motions put forward around. So it means that there were court hearings, but not trial. So
right, okay.
Yeah. So basically what happened was the first motion was put forward that it should be dismissed, the conviction, and a retrial occur because of the evidence being by Dwayne Deaver being false. And that was then found that, yes, we should have another trial. But then there was all these motions around what could and couldn't be included in a retrial, because the judge really made a bit of an ethical decision of his own, that he felt that in the first trial, allowing things in like the second staircase case, being allowed into evidence and brought into court was not ethical, and that shouldn't have happened. So there was motions around whether or not that should be able to be allowed into the second trial, or the fact that he was bisexual and bringing in that information.
Well, in this day and age, there is no way you could bring up a person's sexuality as reason or motive for murder.
No, I mean, I guess you could bring in the fact of him having affairs. Could be
an affair, yes.
You don't have to prove motive, absolutely. And that's where the defence opened themselves up by saying that he had the perfect marriage. That allowed the prosecution to bring in all that evidence of, well, how perfect is it if you're off having affairs with men?
True.
They did focus very much. I think it should have been an objection from the defence around her constant going back to that of and repeating it over and over. I don't think that was appropriate, but I don't know what legally you could. I guess you could object over. I don't know. Different states have different rules and as well in that, laws in that as well in America. But so there were different motions in between. But basically, after the retrial was not set. Sorry, they said that they were open to a retrial, but that still opens them up to being able to negotiate. And so I know David Rudolph, he attempted to negotiate with the DA and take an Alford plea, which was declined based on the fact that Candace, Kathleen's sister, and her other sister, and I can't think of her name off the top of my head, both objected to that entirely. They were very strict, very, very staunch on that he was guilty and he needed to be back in jail. So the DA said, no Alford plea, we're going to trial. And at that point, David Rudolph said, I'm out. I can't do this to myself again. And I respect that, why he made that decision.
For sure.
He said, I can't do this for you, but I know someone who can. And he got him in touch with the attorney. But not only did he say, he didn't say, it wasn't about a money thing, but Michael didn't have any money left. So it all had to be done pro bono as well. So he did find him another attorney and they appointed that attorney. They got to a point with that attorney and he ended up having a stroke. So that delayed things as well. And then another attorney stepped in and she wasn't able to negotiate things as, I think, in the courtroom as well as others maybe.
Sure.
But she did a good job from what I could see, but that was an issue. I think having the attorney said it was a second step in at the last minute and things which didn't go their way. So that held things up. Yeah. And then they finally got to a point where, retrial is being set and they were able to negotiate the Alford plea on the fact that there was some other evidence being found that wasn't going to be able to be included. I think there was stuff that was the computer images and things were all found to be not meeting the Constitution.
Yeah, yeah. There were several things that sort of played into that.
Yeah.
But for anybody who doesn't know, an Alford plea is a guilty plea in a criminal court where a defendant in their criminal case does not admit to the criminal act and asserts their innocence, but accepts the imposition of the sentence. So pretty much it means that he accepts that there was enough evidence against him to potentially convict him, but he still pleads his innocence.
Yeah.
And so that was accepted and he was let go on time served. So I think in the end he served 86 months in prison. Does that sound right?
No, he served 96 months.
Oh, 96.
And but he was sentenced to only 82, a maximum of 82 months in the end.
But they made him stay in prison while they awaited all of these motions. So yeah, he ended up serving more time.
Yeah. So
I've just made a note here in my notes as well about the American judicial system, which I think needs to be said. So judges are elected in the States, and so they're politically motivated, and so are district attorneys. And so there's a lot that goes into play there that's not just looking for a just outcome necessarily.
Yeah, yes. Because the other thing is we don't have an equivalent of an Alford plea here in Australia at all. Like you can negotiate like a guilty plea in similar format, but it's not. We don't have an Alford plea as such here in Australia.
No. Yeah, we don't have anything that kind of matches that. So I just wanted to talk a little bit about some more evidence that sort of came into the trial that we haven't quite discussed yet.
It's so much.
The reason I know there's so much, but one of the reasons that I really do feel like, something happened that definitely hasn't come out yet, and I feel like Michael definitely knows more than what has come out. That's
okay. Oh, I want to know this.
Well, what I say is knows more. I think there's so much more to the story than what he's let on.
Okay.
So I'm talking about the fact that there's evidence to show that Kathleen's body was lying there for potentially hours before he called 911, or at least before first responders arrived.
Which he does, and I think there was a change of his story at one point, which puts question marks over some things. But he does what he doesn't lie about. I guess. Well, who knows what he's lying about because he lies about it so much. But he says he was down by the pool, continuing to finish a cigar and drink wine and that sort of thing. I guess we don't know how long between her going upstairs and this occurring and him finding her though.
Yeah, but he said he was only out there for like half an hour.
Oh, see, I heard somewhere else an hour, and then I've heard 2 hours.
Yeah, so what's true?
And
that to me is just bizarre.
Because the other thing is that there was in the crime scene there was mention that, well, firstly, within the trial. And after the fact, it has been spoken about, there was dry blood.
That's exactly what I was about to talk about.
If you look at the reports that were written by the first responders, there is no mention anywhere of dry blood. So it's kind of an afterthought of whether or not,
there is video evidence that shows a crime scene investigator. Okay, granted, I think they arrived. It was that night that they arrived. I'm not sure the exact time frame.
Yeah,
but you can see one of them touching a wall with their glove, and there's no blood on their glove.
I haven't seen that. Right? Yeah.
So at that point, the blood is dry. So a drop of blood will take 1 hour to dry at average room temperature and humidity, which it was in their house that night.
Yeah.
For there to be so much blood and for there to be the potential for some of it to actually be dry, that implies that potentially there was a far greater time span that the blood was sitting there.
Okay.
No. Yep. The other thing that we haven't spoken about is the shoe print they found on her back.
Okay. Yeah.
So there was a shoe print, when they moved her body on the back of her t-shirt, a shoe print.
Of her pants, wasn't it? On the pants.
Was it on her pants? I thought it was on the back of her top.
That's on the back of her pants.
Oh, God, it probably was.
I do have.
I've got too many details. Yeah, you look up your notes and let me know. But anyway, there was a shoe print found on her back, and the shoe matched the shoes that Michael was wearing that night.
Yes.
Now, he has never provided an explanation as to why his shoe print was there.
He was cradling her on the floor. That's how they walked in and found him.
Yes, he was cradling her.
In him scooping under her and getting underneath her and cradling her like that, could his shoe have touched the back of her pant? And that have been...
Was it
how that
definitely her
got there?
pants? Have you found your notes?
Fairly sure it was.
Okay, if it was her pants, I could possibly come at that. Her t-shirt, no, you don't put your foot into someone's back.
No.
At any point. If it was her pants, okay. I've got it written down in my notes that it was her t-shirt, but I could absolutely be wrong.
So, yeah, on the back of her pants, I've got...
Okay, well, okay, in that case, I can see that that's...
could have transferred to her leg during this time and... Yeah. So, back of the leg I've got. Yeah,
okay.
Yeah.
And then the other thing that they found on autopsy were red neurons in her brain.
Yes, can you explain that to me? Because every time anyone spoke about that and anything I was reading or listening to, I was like, this is not making sense.
So it basically shows that her brain was deprived of oxygen.
Okay.
And
so these little red neurons appear once your oxygen's depleting.
That's exactly right. And they're there forever.
Right.
Once you've got them, you've got them.
Okay.
They're indicative of a neuronal injury, of an acute neuronal injury, so an acute injury to the brain.
Okay.
And they are a result of cell death. So basically brain cells dying or necrosis, which is premature death of a cell.
Yeah.
In order for these to develop in a corpse, the body would have had to have been there. Sorry, the body would have had to have had a 2-hour or more period of death.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So again, what was the course of events? How long was she actually lying there? How long did it take her to die? Did she go straight inside, fall down, hit her head, try and get back up, hit her head again? So, these lacerations sort of happened, or these splits happened in her brain, and she's literally been alive, not having any oxygen going to her brain during that time.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know.
Yeah.
The other thing that I think is really interesting to note is that she had, so I read in a few of the case notes I was reading about it, that her hyoid bone was broken.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so if your hyoid bone is broken, that's indicative of a strangulation. But it turns out it actually wasn't her hyoid bone that was broken. It was thyroid cartilage. And that's far less specific and far less conclusive. So we can't say that she was strangled. Again, the prosecution presented a theory that she was potentially strangled for that last 6 minutes between the two 911 calls.
From what I can gather with the thyroid in that situation, she could have hit herself in the neck on one of the stairs when she's fallen, and that's what would have caused that injury, not a strangulation as such.
I get that.
Yeah.
But then the positioning of her body doesn't match that, because she was actually found lying face up.
But could she have done that and still got herself up?
And that's when she got herself up, I guess. I mean, for that to be true,
like she wouldn't die immediately from that injury. No. Like if she's remained conscious after that fall onto her neck and hitting thyroid, I can see where she's then fallen into the position where she did end up.
True. Yeah.
Yeah.
That kind of fits.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's a strange one. It's a really strange one.
This whole case is so strange, because what we haven't sort of spoken much about is then that the prosecution were allowed to bring in the evidence of the fact that there was another death of a woman at the end of the stairs, of being that this Liz Ratliff. I mean, who in their life knows one person who's died by falling down the stairs, let alone two? I mean,
this is what I mean about the coincidental nature of this. Like, it's too much.
I know. And look, there's lots of reasons. Like there's this rule, evidence rule in America called the 404B, which is where this evidence should not have been allowed in, because to bring in something like that, there has to be a real tie between that evidence and this particular case. For example, like if there was a robbery, bank robbery is happening and that sort of thing, and this guy's been, say, convicted of it previously of being a bank robber, and he's now let out and he's robbed another bank, you can't bring in that evidence of that the other bank robberies without like a tie, say, of the previous robberies, the robber wore a Richard Nixon mask, and these robberies, again, is the Richard Nixon mask. Like, then you can tie the two together. But if there's no tie of that sort of nature, you can't bring up the fact that there were previous convictions. So this is the same with this. I mean, two people falling down the stairs and dying, unless there is a genuine real link of like him being accused of it back then, but let go, which he wasn't. It was found to be a natural death at the time. So it shouldn't have been brought into this case.
Although body.
Well, this is it. They got to the point where they even exhumed her body and did a re-look at her, the autopsy, or they did another autopsy, which just brought more questions over the prosecution and their level of corruption. Which then blows my mind that there is that level of stupidity and corruption within. Why did they? I don't understand why they would have so desperately wanted to convict him of this unless he really did it. Because, I mean, writing a few articles as he did about the cops and their incompetencies.
That's his theory.
That's the theory.
So he was a columnist for the local newspaper, basically.
Yeah.
And he'd written some scathing things about the Durham County Police.
Which I don't see those being enough to warrant them going to this extent and wanting him to be in jail for life.
Unless it was. Like, this is America. You know, like, who knows? Maybe they were motivated by that.
Yeah.
I don't think we can conclusively say one way or another. Like, I can't imagine why they would.
No.
But it's possible, I guess.
Yeah.
Because what else? Why else are they like a dog with a bone? Is it because they've got no other? I mean, what skin off their nose would it be for them to say at the end of all of the evidence that they've found to say, right, well, this is inconclusive. We don't have enough to convict him. So we're going to either have to keep investigating it or we're going to have to put this down to an accidental death.
Yeah. Because, I mean, in that second autopsy, what she described isn't even ethical of being named as being the cause of death. You know, there's kind of tick boxes in an autopsy of either, you know, what are they, like what, you know, whether or not they think that there's some sort of homicide or whether it's natural or these sorts of things. And she ticked a box and then wrote specifically that Liz Ratliff died of blunt force trauma to the head, or like a homicidal, what did she call it? A homicidal attack or something.
Yeah, it was. I think that's exactly what she said.
Can't
it was a homicidal
that. Like, no. She's like, it's, but so she's been directed to do that.
And again, like, where's the motivation for this? Why? Yeah. I mean, they obviously had their sights set on him and convicting him.
Yeah.
Is it a conviction rate thing? As in they, you know, they want to get their numbers up? I don't know.
So I believe her body was exhumed from another state.
It was.
And then shipped in a hearse to this particular person who had done the autopsy already on Kathleen.
That's right.
To be done by the same person. Wouldn't that have been a great opportunity to have another independent person from another state do the autopsy of her again and go, I found this? I mean,
I think that's the criticism of the process. They should have had a completely impartial person, a forensic pathologist, conduct the autopsy on Liz's body.
Yeah. Just puts giant question marks over the whole thing.
I think so too. There's nothing conclusive there.
No.
Yep. All right. I think it's time. It's time for hood.
The owl theory.
So this one's a bit of fun. But you know what?
Do you know what? No. It's not a bit of fun. This is my answer.
Yeah. I mean, it is absolutely plausible. And all right, you take it. It's yours.
There is so much. And this is where, like, I am pretty sold on this, that this is my theory. And as I've said previously, I don't rate Michael Peterson. There's much about him I dislike, but I just can't find enough to go, it was him. I really can't. Whereas the owl theory presents lots of ways as to being correct.
So the owl theory was developed by their next door neighbour who was an ex-judge.
Yes.
And he, I guess, proximity to the case made him curious, and he started looking into things for himself and presented what is now known as the owl theory.
And David Rudolph, the defence attorney for Michael, was presented with this information, unfortunately too far down the track of the case, of the trial. Otherwise, he has admitted he would have brought this in 100%. He would have put this forward as a possible other theory, but it was just too late to start bringing in Which, I mean, because on the surface, it sounds cuckoo. Like,
What doesn't sound cuckoo? Like,
well, this
you know,
whole bit's
in the twists and turns of this story, of course there's an owl theory.
So in the area where they lived, there were many barred owls. And these barred owls are known for being somewhat aggressive and protecting their territory. There have been other attacks in the area. Granted, I don't know that people have died, but there's definitely been recorded cases of these barred owls attacking people.
Yep.
So in the autopsy, it was found that these splits that they described on the skull were actually in the shape of like a trident or an owl's talons. So you can see there's like two, and we can put the image up on our socials to show people of what the markings look like of her head. Now, because this is the thing that threw me the entire way through this case, was that if you're going to fall down the stairs and hit your head, to me, you're going to hit the sides of your head more than the top, the scalp. Her injuries were scalp. An owl is going to come down and land on your scalp. And these talon marks are well at the top of her scalp. In the scalp injuries were found micro feathers from the barred owl.
I think they found 2 fragments of larger feathers too.
Yes, on the body.
On the body.
Yeah. So, and these micro feathers, though, grow on the talons of the barred owls. So, marries up. She was also found to have markings on her face, which when you fall down the stairs, I don't know how you're getting those, but these were in the shape of a barred owl's beak. She also had on her hands and her arms 9 wounds, which would be defensively trying to get the owl off her head.
Well, this is the only theory that explains her defensive wounds, really. Because even the way the prosecution presented, like Michael essentially beating her with a blow poke, at that point she would have been unconscious, so she wouldn't have had defensive wounds. So yeah.
So further to that, there was blood spots found front door of the house, which is the separate entrance to coming from the back from the pool. So if she's coming from the pool and to the stairs, that's not going to, how does she got out the front? Where's that come from? But there is a theory that she could have gone out the front because it was coming up to Christmas. She was doing some decorating and that she may have come up to do a bit of that. And she's gone out the front to put out some pieces. And this is when the owl has attacked. Potentially she has, so then the owl has attacked her. She's trying to get the owl off her and there's blood drops. There's also a smear of blood on the front door, on the side of the door, which again, that would explain that as she's run inside to try and get this owl off her head. I mean, look, and what you've done in a panic situation like that where there's this large raptor on your head and you're bleeding, trying to get that off and running in. She's quite possibly bled running up the stairs, fallen, hit the thyroid, gone down, tried to get back up again, and fallen again and hit her head again, and knocked herself out and with blood loss.
Yep.
That all seems to make sense.
How did the owl get out?
Flew back out through the door and closed it behind it.
That's the bit that I don't get.
Well, see,
because all of the doors were shut when Michael came in.
But did she get the owl off her outside and then run in?
Okay. I thought you were saying that the owl was like still on her head as she's running.
It's still I'm sorry. Yeah. No. I mean, like, so she's getting the owl off and she's run inside, like,
right.
And
the owl's gone.
The owl's gone. Like, as she's come through the front door, she's got it off.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. I mean, as I said, it's a very simple theory.
So, because the other thing is, DNA-wise, there was none found of Michael's on her.
No.
So but whereas there was our DNA found.
Well, yeah.
Yeah.
Owl feathers.
Yeah, owl feathers. Yeah. And the beak marks. And I am pretty sold on this theory. And I know I sound like a crazy person.
No, you don't. You absolutely. I mean, it does sound crazy. This whole case is crazy.
Because if this is the reality, if this is actually what happened,
people need to be aware.
Well, yes, watch out for those owls. But I actually have a lot of empathy then for Michael, whose wife has died from this, and he's been put in jail for 8 years and through absolute hell for 15 years,
This is
16
another
years.
thing, though, right? His attitude gets me. His wife has died. Okay, let's assume our theory is right.
Oh, we're not assuming.
His wife's dead.
Yeah.
Under a very traumatic and horrific circumstance.
Yeah.
If that was me, why isn't he just constantly like, I didn't do this. What is happening? What, like, he seems to accept everything that happens to him.
Very measured, like.
Very measured.
But that's, I guess, what we're seeing on a screen where he's trying not to look like he could be aggressive or look a certain way. Is it maybe a personality trait of his? You know, that's because to me, he's a very interesting person. Take all of this away, you know, there are some quite quirky natured behaviors of his. Pre all of this, there was some shit, you know.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I just think we can't. Can you judge a person on just being a bit wacko?
No, you can't. But I think if I was convicted of something or accused of something that I hadn't done, I couldn't let that go.
But well, he didn't let it go. As in, I know what you're saying though. Like he was very.
He's just like,
yeah.
And like when his kids come and visit him in jail, and he just sort of like chats with them. And I mean, I guess at some point you might need to accept your fate. You know how you were talking about the other case where the guy was convicted. So this Dwayne
Deaver.
had
fucked up all the blood stuff on his case too.
On his case as well. He actually said in an interview I saw with him that basically he had to accept his fate because even though he knew in his heart of hearts that he hadn't done it, and he was explicit in saying that at every court hearing, at every step of the way. By the time he'd been convicted, though, he thought, well, I have no choice but to assimilate and to just go along with this because he exhausted all of his, what do you call them?
His appeals.
And everything. So he had to accept what had happened to him.
Yeah. And I guess if you don't, you're going to send yourself pretty crazy, aren't you? And it's like, what's left of my life to live?
We see Michael before he's gotten to that point. We see Michael in the documentary before he's been convicted.
But I guess we don't really see behind closed doors, though.
I guess you're right.
You know, with the camera crew in your face.
You're going to behave in a certain way.
Yeah. I mean, there's a moment where I really felt for him in this. They were sitting around the table talking fairly explicitly around Kathleen's death. And he is beside himself and he removes himself from the table. Yeah. And one of the guys says, we can't talk about this stuff in front of him anymore. And I actually thought that was a moment for me that kind of went, like, did he or didn't he do this then? Like, because
I get that, but surely even if he'd been the one to perpetrate the crime, you wouldn't want to hear it either. You wouldn't necessarily want to be like, oh yeah, that's right, I bashed her head in mine, yeah. Shit,
well, I mean, I don't buy the blow poke.
I don't buy the blow poke either.
And so then what else would have inflicted those same injuries
that he pushed her down the stairs?
But see, again, the pushing.
Like they were having a fight.
To me, that side of the head injuries,
But this is where the splitting of the head theory comes in. So it's not where she got hit. This is just where the impact has then split her head.
Yeah, right. Because the injuries that you look at because they show the side by side of Kathleen's injuries and Elizabeth Ratliff's injuries when she fell down the stairs. And as much as like there's so many similarities, but there's so many differences. Like there's 7 lacerations on both their heads, which is freakishly insane. Specific. I mean, even if you're pushing people down the stairs as your way of killing people, you can't know there's going to be 7 every time you do it.
So where were the lacerations on Liz's head?
So hers were more to the side and not so much on the top.
Yeah.
So hers were definitely, to me, and they were definitely not as pronounced. Yet she had the brain swelling and things like that. So to me, that was more consistent with a fall down the stairs than what we're presented with from Kathleen.
Yep.
The owl.
It has to be.
I'm all about the owl. Sorry, people.
I think I might be convinced that way too.
Did I get you over?
I think so. I mean,
I'm so excited.
As I said, look, it would not surprise me if it ever came out that Michael did it. That would not surprise me.
He's a very interesting character, and like there's so many things with and this is where I've written in my notes, like when I was doing this like just series of unfortunate events. Can one person seriously have all these coincidences and
this is my thing,
phenomenal events in their life without being a piece of shit?
but also being involved in some way. Like you've orchestrated this one way or another.
Part of me actually throughout the documentary was like, I think you enjoy this attention.
Oh, he loves the attention.
So part of me was like, again, it's that there was narcissistic traits in him for sure.
Definitely.
You wouldn't have called a camera crew if you didn't have narcissistic traits. Like, let's be honest. So I do. That's where I kind of go, I think he might be innocent because he doesn't present well, but that's the narcissism. It still doesn't make him a murderer.
No, I agree.
Yeah. I wanted to conclude at the end of this that he did it and there's an injustice here.
I don't think
I have that much empathy for like Candace and Kathleen's sisters and family and her daughter. I really feel for them, and I know they were presented pretty poorly in the docu-series. I was spoken pretty poorly of. I really didn't like that.
No.
And she's actually, there's a podcast where she talks really clearly, and I really have a lot of time for her in all of it. I think what really sucks, unfortunately, is that she was convinced of a certain way early on by the prosecution. It was presented to her, Michael's the murderer. Look at these crime scene photos. Isn't it horrible what he has beaten her to death?
I think it was the head lacerations that made Caitlin change sides, essentially, to basically go, oh, he couldn't have not done this.
Which I completely get. You would see those images of your sister, your mother, and be absolutely heartbroken and think, oh God, if someone, if he did this to her, I want him, in jail for life. Absolutely. So I think her being led down that path, that's why her brain is thinking that he did this. I have all empathy for how she has reacted to this situation, 100%. But if it's not fact.
It's not fact, and it hasn't been proven. And I don't know that we'll ever know.
No, again. Geez, we need to do some cases where we actually know outcomes and it's factual.
When there's conclusive evidence. No, actually, that's a fair point. And no more owl theories, okay?
No, but I love a good owl theory. Where else are we going to get one of those from?
I did see a really interesting article when I was looking up the owl theory, and it was entitled Death by Talons. It's actually a really interesting read if you Google it.
Well, if you do want to find more out about the owl theory too, David Rudolph has his own website too, and there's a stack of information on there about the owl theory. And the best part of his website actually on the owl theory is the comment section.
Yeah, it's great.
So, obviously, David Rudolph has a belief on how this is all played out, and I think the owl theory obviously fits well for them because they think he's innocent. Well, presenting that he's innocent. Well, what David Rudolph believes or thinks is
irrelevant
because he just has to do his job. Yeah, but the comment section, there's some very intelligent people in that comment section and there's some very unintelligent people in that comment section.
It's actually really fun reading.
So, yeah, it's worth a look. But God, between blowpokes and anal sex and owl theories, I think we might be done with this case.
I think we're done. There's a lot more, and we will put some bits and bobs either on the socials. There might be some stuff in the show notes that you can have a read of because you can dive deep.
Oh, yeah.
You can dive really, really deep. Mm-hmm. But if you just want a little bit of an overview, I think the dramatization, the series of this was done pretty well.
Yeah, it's pretty, it doesn't go off on too many tangents.
No, it doesn't. And it's not entirely factual, but it's, it's based on the truth. And it's a really entertaining watch. And also, obviously, the Netflix documentary, The Staircase.
It's a bit hard to get through, but yeah, it's worth a watch.
It's 13 episodes. They're roughly an hour or so long each, so it is a bigger commitment.
Yeah.
And some of the stuff's
a bit dry. One of the most interesting things I found about the docuseries was access that camera crew had was unbelievable. I loved watching what happens after the court hearing.
When he's in his cell waiting, like at lunchtime.
Yeah.
And they let the camera crew in there. Yeah. That blows my mind. That would never happen here. Never.
Yeah. Worth a look. Yeah.
How Anyway, thank you everybody for listening again. If you've got any theories or any ideas, please let us know because we're very interested to
tell us how crazy we are for our theories. Or come and join our bandwagon.
Yes. We'd love to hear everyone's feedback and what they think of the case and their theories. So please leave comments on our socials. As I said last week, don't forget to like and subscribe to our channel. We're on YouTube now as well. If you want to see our beautiful faces while we're recording.
No, you don't.
We had a bit of a wardrobe mishap today where our both rocked up wearing denim shirts. So I had a bit of a costume change. Yeah. But anyway.
The same sign of true friendships is when you start wearing the same clothes as each other.
You know, it happens to us all the time. Anyway, that's okay.
Yep.
So yeah, please subscribe and share this if you can with a friend who also likes listening to true crime podcasts. The other thing we would love are suggestions on different cases that you would like us to do. We have a list that is as long as our arm, but we really want to do cases that people are interested in and people want to know more about. So please let us know, and you never know, it might be one of the cases that we discuss upcoming.
Definitely. Yeah, that'd be great. And yeah, the more people who are listening, the more we can keep making this and keep going, because we're loving it. Hope you guys are.
All right. Have a great week, everyone, and we will see you next week.
See you next week with yet another crime.
Stay curious, crime besties.